Hey, it's Wednesday. That means it is TRBM Ammo Style. My guest on today's show is not a participant in ammo, and that will frequently be the case with this show, is that I'm still speaking to somebody from the community who is published, sometimes traditionally, sometimes self-published, but we're going to be talking a lot about marketing and different aspects surrounding that. So you're pretty familiar with the format. Not too much to prep you on ahead of time. As always, there's links to the ammo program. And for a little while, I want to just continue to give you a rundown of what the ammo program does in case you're interested in exploring it more for yourself. AMMO stands for Author Marketing Mastery Through Optimization. And it is a program that helps authors, preferably authors who have an established series of books or at least 3 to 4 books currently published. Now, I only have 3 books published right now. One of them came out this week, so not too many books, and I have made it successful. I am profitably selling books right now because of the ammo program. The authors who do the best, the ones who are making 6 and 7 figures with the ammo program, have 7, 8, 9, 10 books and really have a good program for moving books. But if you are in a situation where you have 7 books out there, they're well written, you've paid for the editing, you've paid for the book covers, you've paid for the design and the layout, and you're just not getting the kind of sales you want, Ammo will help you design targeted ads, mostly through Facebook, that you can reach readers who are interested in reading the type of work you're writing. It doesn't matter what genre. Honestly, there's nonfiction, there's fiction, whatever it is, the program itself is designed to walk you through all of the nitty-gritty of setting up your ads and then getting a sales page that converts. My sales page right now is converting at 25%. So 1 in 4 people clicks on the buy now button. And I'm getting 50% sell through once they've hit that. So if you look up industry numbers, that is tremendous. It's what allows you to sell ebooks profitably. We have people who do this with audiobooks as well as paperbacks. So that's the basic rundown of what Ammo does. Now my conversation is going to be with A.R. Kaufer. This is a fantastic discussion where we are going to range all across the board on how to market your book by human connection. It's a fantastic episode. I read and enjoyed her book, Courting Fate. She has a new book coming out called Courting Destiny just a couple of weeks from now on June 15th. So if you are interested, you can check her books out on Kindle Unlimited. You can buy them through KDP and get reading. These are fantasy books that reminded me a little bit of Terry Goodkind's Sword. I don't know, there's 20 books, so I don't know what you call a 20 bookology. But anyways, it reminded me a little bit of that with less politics and more romance. Now, without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with A.R. Kaufer.
If you ever watched an author read in public and felt bored, TRBM is the antidote. That reminds me of chasing a really good lead on a case down a dark alley, then wham, nothing. TRBM is for writers what time-lapse was for painters, what guitar solos and spotlight were for bands, and what chainsaws and ice blocks were for sculptors. But what does TRBM stand for? Trampling rascals bounce maniacally? 20 radicals bail money? Or timelines really bully me? Go on, you decide.
I know a lot of people are mood readers that, they might think, oh, next week I'm going to read the new Stephen King book, but then they decide to read, a fantasy book instead. I actually schedule my books. I put it on my calendar. Okay, on this date, I'm going to read this book.
Oh, wow.
I get my housework out of the way. I get my dogs taken care of. And then I sit down knowing that depending, 3 to 600 pages, that I'm going to read this book in roughly 4 to 6 hours. And I plan my day around reading that book.
Wow. That's crazy. So I guess then that opens up a question for me is, because you have 2 books out right now, if I found them all?
Yes.
And so are you making a full-time living on the book so far, or is there a job mixed into the recipe, or how are things all fitting together for you? Because that's a huge block of reading time. That's what made me curious.
My husband is the breadwinner right now.
Gotcha.
Basically, any money I make from my books goes back into the books as far as my editor and
Awesome.
programs that I use like Canva and Microsoft Word. Um, but I know we're not supposed to compare ourselves to others, but you at least want to kind of have an idea of where you stand,
Hmm.
as far as sales and reads and things.
Yeah.
And from what I have seen from people posting on Twitter and TikTok about their sales, that I am doing very well
Yeah.
for being a fairly new, relatively unknown indie author. That I've
Mm-hmm.
had sales around the world, that I've had readers from around the world reach out to me to talk to me about my books.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I kind of went off in a different tangent
No, you're
there.
fine. I mean, I hear where you're coming from, and I think if I'm reading between the lines correctly, when someone asks a question to you like, "Hey, are you making a full-time living as an author?" then I think the feeling that we get is like, "Oh, I'm not enough if I'm not at that point," and so we try to talk about the successes we have had, and so I apologize. I'm not saying that you're not enough if you're not making a full-time living as an author. I think I just right now I have some assumptions about the world around me. And it's funny because even my assumptions are not true of my own world. In other words, I'm the breadwinner in our family for all the bread that I
Mhm.
make or don't make right now. And my wife raises our kids, and that's what she does. And she does a whole lot of other things. There are people in there who think that if you're not working a job, a traditional job, I guess, that somehow that's lesser than. But I do tend to assume in the world we live in right now that married or unmarried, everybody's working some kind of job, and that's not necessarily the truth.
Right. I didn't think it like that in the sense, okay, to me, being the full time author is a job. I'm
Yes.
literally 10 to 12 hours a day. I'm on my laptop, my phone, my tablet, interacting with readers, interacting with other authors, marketing, editing, revising. I also acknowledge and understand how blessed I am to be
Hmm.
able to do this. That I know authors out there that have full time jobs, that have, 2 to 3 jobs, that are raising families. And my God, my heart goes out to them because I know how stressed I am doing this full time. I could
Yeah.
not imagine having all those other responsibilities on top of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me echo that as well. I've been really fortunate that I'm able to focus full time between the podcast and writing books. Those are the only things that I have to focus on. Couldn't agree with you more on the amount of time that's going in to make this happen. And sometimes I'm just my mind is blown to think about people who are writing and still going into clock into a job and make money. All the different sacrifices. I couldn't imagine having to do something else on top of everything I'm doing. So I really hear where you're coming from. When did you start taking it as seriously as you are? Was there a moment where you went from loving writing and treating it a little bit like a hobby to treating it like a profession? Because you're clearly treating it like a profession at this point.
I about 12 years ago, I started writing. I wrote out 2 vampire novels, one of which is getting revamped, pardon the pun, and I'm
I was going to
hoping
say
to
revamped.
release here in the next few years. The other one hopefully will never see the light of day. Um, but with writing, it's always been sort of my escape. And back in 2021, the pandemic was going on. I had battled COVID myself and was dealing with after effects.
Mm,
And then I started to have some mental health issues. I was battling complex post traumatic stress disorder and severe anxiety. And it was getting to my 40th birthday, and I had decided that I was going to write one last short story. I had been using these writing prompts and sending my sister these short stories, and this was going to be my last birthday and my last short story after I wrote this. Well, as you see, I'm still here.
mhm.
Courting Fate went from a short story to 6 months and over
Wow.
1 million words into an 8 book series. And over that time of writing it, it helped me through my recovery, through my healing. And
Wow.
I realized that this was too important to just sit on my computer, to just sit printed in a binder on my shelf for nobody to see, that I needed to share this story with the world.
Hmm. That's so huge. You just unpacked a really, really large, multifaceted topic for us to touch on. So, um, like I said in the beginning, any of these questions that you're uncomfortable with, we can skate right past. I can edit things out. But I want to stop and ask you about the mental health aspect of it, because I
Go
think
right ahead.
that writing is one of those things. Some people will find stability through real estate investing or through accounting. So I don't think that it's specifically writing, but there's something kind of amazing when you realize that writing can help you battle back from mental health struggles. Can you share a little bit more about how you got to that place and how you discovered that writing was at least part of the path out?
Well, I won't say the author, although a lot of people know her books. But I had read a book by a certain author that is very well known for these cringy romance novels
Okay.
that are all over Book Talk. And reading her book actually sent me into a severe episode
Really?
because something that happened in the book mirrored almost exactly what happened to me in my childhood,
Oh, wow.
including even details like the glow in the dark stars on the ceiling. And that was when I started the downward spiral with my mental health and then decided to write the short story. I got the writing prompt and I had gotten it at work the day before my birthday. So the day of my birthday, I sat down to kind of outline and I was going to write the short story. And then even just doing the outline, I realized this was going to be more than just a simple, 1,000, 2,000 word short story for me to send my sister.
Hmm.
So the next day I was off work. Back then I only worked like 3 to 4 days a week part time because of my health issues. And I sat down to start writing this book and it literally consumed me. You can ask my husband, 10 to 12 hours a day. If I was not at work, 10 to 12 hours a day, I was sitting at my laptop just pounding out the story. I actually averaged 12 to 15,000 words per day as I was writing it, that it just completely took me over. Like it was like my brain just hyper focused on this story and getting it out
Wow.
there.
So
Um,
no outline or anything like that. You were literally
I
writing
I
forward,
did
kind
do
of
a
blind.
basic I did do a basic outline the day before, and I mean it was just a very
Yeah.
simple, point A they meet, point B this happens, point C. Like it was not at
Sure, sure.
all,
Yeah.
but just basic, just for the short story. And
Hmm.
then, as I said, as I started to do this even basic outline, I started to realize, okay, there's going to be more to this than just a short story. This is at least going to be, I thought a book, maybe a duology. Um, Now, back then, I was on an older laptop, so I didn't know about word counts or anything like that. It wasn't actually until I joined Twitter and said, "Oh, I wrote 5,000 words today," and I'm like, "Where do I find that on my laptop? I don't know word count." And then I discovered that it was about 1,255,000 words. So doing the math, that averaged out to roughly 8 books. So it just completely took me over.
That is phenomenal. It's such an exciting experience. There's a couple of things. One is I want to start with triggers, because
Okay.
something you talked about is relevant to a really common uh, conversation about trigger warnings. First off, you and I have read each other's book. You read The Nine Lives of Margaret Longhigh. I read
Yeah.
Courting Fate. We agreed to read each other's work and give a fair and honest review. We both did that on Amazon. It was a fun experience for me. I loved reading your book. I really look forward to the sequel, which is dropping imminently, and the rest of the books in the series. The one that you're talking about, I don't recall that I warned you about the first death in my book. I don't think I gave you a trigger warning. And as a general rule, I don't give trigger warnings because I came up in the academic atmosphere. I got my master's of fine arts in fiction writing, and everybody talked about trigger warnings all the time. And there were elements of trigger warning discussions that were off-putting to me. I didn't like that I had to warn people about any possible triggering thing inside of my book. And I was like, how can I even guess at what might be triggering to somebody else? Now, I knew in my case that the rape that happens in the first death could be triggering to people, but I chose not to include that as a general rule. I'm curious, now that you've read that book, was it offensive to you that I hadn't warned you?
I honestly did not even realize until you and I were messaging about each other that that had even happened in the book because I think my brain kind of blacked
Okay.
out for it. Um, Here's okay. Let me, as a survivor of child abuse, domestic violence, sexual assault. Let me say, as far as trigger warnings go, you can have them, you can still upset people. You cannot have them, and people aren't bothered by it. I mean, basically, it's like anything else with your book. There's no right or wrong answer, because somebody's either going to be offended or they're not.
Yeah.
I just have a basic warning for Courting Fate, that it covers serious topics. I mean, okay, I actually brought this up when the movie It came out by Stephen King, because people were saying, "Oh my gosh, this movie needs trigger warnings. It has homophobia, it has death, it has." I'm sorry, I know going in, reading or watching something called horror, I know these things are going to be in it or potentially are going to be in it.
Yeah.
Now, if I'm reading a book that looks like a cute, funny rom-com, and on page 28, she's brutally raped, I'm going to be a little upset. Like, okay, nowhere in the description was this noted. This didn't have any warnings at all. It did not prepare me. But again, I'm not going to be upset with the author. That was my own trigger.
Yeah.
Everybody is different and everybody has their opinions on the trigger warnings. But me personally, if they're included, I will read them and I'll check it out. But if they're not, I'm not going to be offended or angry or upset that, oh my gosh, why did the author not include this with this book? I should have known this going in.
You know what? That is such a really keen insight that I would have never considered before, is that when you're reading in a genre that's likely to deal with certain themes, then that in and of itself is kind of like the trigger warning. I've wondered before, and I've conversed with previous guests about, do books need a similar rating system to what we have for film? I've never personally been annoyed if I go to a rated R movie, that it's rated R, and been like, it's ruined my experience that it was rated R. Now I know too much about, like, they're going to drop multiple F-bombs. It's like, okay.
Well, I kind of feel like the genre themselves is that, like,
to a degree,
not the genre, but in the sense that, okay, I'm reading a book that says it's middle grade. Now, if I read a book that says it's middle grade and I open it up and it's full of sex and foul language, that's not supposed to be middle grade. That's, but you understand going into an adult epic fantasy that there could be topics of rape or brutalization or torture. Book 2 has a torture scene in it that is fairly explicit. Again, I'm just going with a general warning because it's fantasy. If you've read, I understand a lot of people, if they've only read Lord of the Rings, they might be surprised by the darker aspects of fantasy. But most people, at the very least, have heard of Game of Thrones, know how violent that is. And
very true.
My books are pretty mild, from what I understand, compared to those.
Yeah, I've not read George R.R. Martin, but I would definitely say that your book in general is mild. I didn't find there to be any level of violence or sexuality that seemed. It hasn't even. It seemed mild by comparison to what I'm used to reading. So yeah.
And each book, like I say, they do get a little darker. They do get a little bit more spice in them as they go on, because as characters are learning to trust themselves and their partners and to grow in their relationships, and I don't mean to digress, but that is another thing that sort of bothers me sometimes, is when I'm posting about my books on various social media and I immediately get, ooh, how spicy is it? I understand people love spice. There's nothing wrong with that. I have a spicy fairy tale retelling coming out in October, but that should not be the first question you ask somebody who's promoting what is obviously a magic and wartime and sorcery fantasy book.
Right. Yeah, I think in general, and I've had this conversation recently as well, reviews and people's responses to our writing can be so frustrating. And I think in the same way, I don't personally want trigger warnings. That I feel like I can navigate my way through what I'm going to encounter in literature. Although I do want to come back to that conversation, because there's something that happened to you that I think is worth considering for anybody who's on the no trigger warning side of the conversation. But for the purpose of this, I want to also say as an author that people's reviews can be strangely brutal. And I wonder, as a reader, what are they thinking if they choose to leave a review that's really scathing, but clearly not aimed to be helpful to readers or anything. So I'll use my own 1-star review as an example. So I have a mailing list. When people buy my books, they join my mailing list unless they happen to get it off of Amazon. But most people who read my books end up on my mailing list because that's how I advertise. And so I reached out to my mailing list after a little while, after I figured most people had probably had a chance to read. And I said, I want to give away my audiobook for The Nine Lives of Marva DeLong High for anybody who's willing to drop a review on Amazon and just send me a screenshot, the review. And so I didn't get great interaction from that, which I was a little bit surprised by. But what I did get was one reader said, I would never have even reviewed this, except the author asked for it. It's a 1-star review. It's like, it was really annoying. I almost always finish books and I couldn't finish this book. And Lyle eating all the time was so annoying and, gratuitous murder or something like that. There was clearly nothing aimed to try to be helpful to other readers. And it was pretty harsh and it hit me really hard. I guess I'm asking you a little bit more about your experience with reviews. And while there's definitely a place for a 1-star review, what do you think is the process that's helpful to people when reviewing a book?
I am going to walk on eggshells for this topic because I had a tweet back in January that I don't know if you saw that went viral.
No.
Where I simply said that I was in tears over a 1-star review. I did not point out the reviewer's name. It was on a public site, not something social like Goodreads where people could interact. I just simply said, I'm in tears. This person obliterated my book. And I even apologized to the reader that they hated it so much. And I had videos made on Book Talk attacking me and coming after me. I had to close my account on there for a while. I had to take a week break from Twitter because of it. So while I would never dictate how somebody should write the review or how a review should be given, what I will say as a reader, as an avid reader who has read literally hundreds of books, when I write my review, I try to write what was good about it. I enjoyed the character development. I loved the story. And then I tried to give a few little critiques as well. I thought the buildup was a little slow, or I thought the world building could have been a little bit more fleshed out. I would never leave a 5-star review that says, oh, this is a great book, you have to read it. And I would never leave a 1-star review that says, oh my gosh, this was the worst thing I've ever read and nobody on earth should ever read this piece of garbage. Because the reviews are for readers, I would hope that if you're leaving a review knowing that other readers are going to read this, don't put spoilers. I mean, that should just be a given. And B, just, again, a few things you like about it and a few things you didn't like. And just try to keep it civil and polite. I mean, that's just common sense to me.
Yeah, I like that. I like that strategy. I'm thinking about this novel that I read. I'm going to read the review for the listeners more than for you, but we can discuss this because I've had this strange journey. I'm also an avid reader like yourself. I tend to put away somewhere in the neighborhood of 150 and 200 books a year. A good number of those are audiobooks. I definitely count the audio experience as having, quote, read a book, unquote.
Oh, absolutely.
So I don't know that I consider it reading by definition, but I do consider the book read. So I don't know how that works. And we can discuss that too if you want, but because that's my viral tweet, by the way. I asked people if audiobook reading was considered reading, and people attacked me on Twitter saying, like, how could you even ask this question? I hadn't even cited an opinion. I was literally just asking a question, and I had thousands of responses to that tweet, and people were saying I was an ableist for even asking the question. It was crazy. I've gotten off track. So I read a book, January 8th, 2021 is when I left this review. So I'm more recently have changed the way that I think and review books. But the book was called Clown in a Cornfield by Adam. I'm probably going to mispronounce his last name, but Cesare. And I wrote, I'm so glad I read this book because for the past year, I had read a number of books I rated as 3-star reads that I felt were, in fact, 1 or 2-star reads. See, I read or listened to some article or interview that said the very act of writing a novel is so challenging that simply finishing one is heroic enough to merit 3 stars. And I thought, as a novelist myself, I get that argument. Writing is so challenging. I know few people who have the discipline to see the book to the end. And I'm going to skip over some stuff here. But the gist is that, like, I came to this conclusion that building a house is also really challenging and very few people do it. But if you build a shitty house, and the house falls down and crushes you, you shouldn't get like approved by any kind of building association just because it's such hard work to build that house. So there needs to be space for 1 or 2 star reviews. And I ended mine by saying, stay away from this book if you're already secure enough in your own skin to understand that a 1 or 2 star rating was acceptable. I think there's a big part of me that felt a huge catharsis in leaving a 1 star review for that book. And I could go into the reasons why I felt like it was so, it took advantage of readers. It took advantage of people. It talked down to people. There was so much that was wrong with it that was really upsetting. But I did read the whole book. And I think that needs to be part of the conversation. If you're going to give a book a 1 or 2 star rating instead of just a DNF, I think you have to have read the whole book. And then
that I agree with. I've had a few people that have DNF'd my book, and then in the review, okay, I'm not going to say anything specific. And actually, this one review has been removed. But I don't understand why the character did this. I don't understand why this happened. I don't understand. Bob, and I'm
what?
just
Finish the book.
Read the book.
Yeah.
All of these questions you are literally asking are answered. And if you weren't invested enough to finish the book, that's fine. And it's not that my book is good or bad. It's just that it wasn't for this particular reader. Not every book is for every reader. I understand that. But I would never read 20, 30 pages of a book and then go on the review sites and, I DNF this book 1 star, unless it was just full of racism or homophobia or something just absolutely terrible.
Right. Yeah, that is actually a really good point too. I think that there are occasions where the star system itself is flawed because it may be worth just getting on and posting a review of a book and not giving it stars. I don't even know if that's possible anymore. Actually, I think that stars are somehow like the gold standard, but it would be worth it to jump on and say, hey, this book is racist or this book is sexist or xenophobic, whatever it might be. There's a list of things that definitely would be worth warning readers that you caught these themes. And the more detailed you are, the more you can help future people to decide if they want to read it. One last thing from my perspective, and then I'll close by asking what you feel about reviews before we move on. But there's a local Omaha author. She, I think, is actually a very good poet. I have enjoyed her poetry quite a bit. She wrote a novel, and there's a bit of a backstory to it, but I saw her at a reading, asked her why she wrote the novel, and she kind of danced around the subject that was basically poetry collections don't make a lot of money, but novels have the opportunity to make a little bit more money. And when I read the novel, it bashed on our city. Was at the time living in Omaha. I still consider Omaha to be kind of like my city. And it was bashing on the town so hard. And I thought, here's somebody who had an opportunity to represent the city and love the city, and she bashed on it. And so for that reason, I was really ill-disposed toward her and left that in the review of like, hey, don't crap where you eat, I guess. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that kind of thing as far as you're writing fantasy, and so you're not necessarily setting it in the real world, but how do you deal with maybe representing your own identity in a negative light? Does that make sense, the question I'm asking?
Okay, perfect example is, I'm going to use the movie because it's more fresh in my brain than the book, but the movie It, chapter 2, that starts with the scene at the fair. And so many people bashed on the movie. Oh, it's homophobic. Oh my gosh, they hate gay people. Oh my gosh, this movie is absolutely terrible. It showed an actual, somewhat real life event that actually happened near where Stephen King lived back in the 80s, which is why he included it in the book. In no way, shape, or form were they glorifying what happened, or were they saying, oh, yes, this is a good thing, what we did. It was literally a scene showing, what happened to these two gay men being bashed on by these homophobes. So people, that gave the movie 1 star or that gave a review of it, I didn't understand that, because in no way, shape, or form was it glorifying it or saying it was okay or anything like that. It was literally, part of the movie. It was showing something that had really happened, and it was showing something that unfortunately does happen in this country that needs to stop.
Absolutely. We're really great point there too. There's obviously the other scene in it where all of the boys have sex with the girl. And that's, I don't think, in the movies. That book could never be written right now. And when I read it, it was
Mhm.
shocking and startling, and I didn't know how I felt about it. But I think the point you're making is that it's really frightening to censor our experience of literature or film based on not being able to even represent bad things that happen, even if we're
Mhm.
saying 100% that's a bad thing that happened. Interesting. I need to
But
think more
kind
on
of
that.
going back to your original point,
Yeah.
of that representation, that to me, there's a difference between, yes, if Stephen King wrote that book now and was like, and it was glorious to see them doing these horrible things, yes,
Yeah.
that would be absolutely, oh my God, automatic
Yeah.
one star that this is terrible. Again, it's, but if the narrator, if oh, I'm John Smith and I live in Pennsylvania and I think
Mhm.
this city I'm in is absolutely terrible and it's disgusting and I want to get out, versus the author is the narrator saying these things and stating these statistics and why this place is horrible.
Mhm.
Again, it's subjective, but
Yeah.
it's in how it's presented as well.
Yeah. 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 Much better set than I did, because even as I was thinking on the question, I was like, I knew it made me angry, and I think the reason was because I felt like the author was actually using the speaker of the book to as their microphone, as her microphone. Um, and
Right.
that might not be fair. I'm really glad that we touched on it though, because this is complex stuff we're discussing. Rating a book, thinking about a book, it's like really challenging process to go through, and I applaud anybody who's even willing to leave a rating or review in the first place. I think.
Well, and I was worried with Sporting Fate because it does deal with like off page, the
Mm,
child abuse that she mentions. It does deal with
yeah.
the villain trying to sexually assault her and hurt
Hmm.
her. And I thought, but it's one of those things. Either people are, one reviewer said that she, actually, I've got it right here. Her words were, early on, I appreciated the thoughtful treatment of both the PTSD and the sexual assault. And I know that, and then, end of her quote, and then there are going to be some people that will be offended by it. But I'm like, again, look at George R. R. Martin, look at the dark fantasy out there that has on page brutalization, horrible, that, and nothing against those books. Again, some people enjoy reading them, people enjoy writing them, but that's not what mine was. And I just was not sure how mine was going to be received because it does take on these serious topics.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a scary part of the process. I know for me, a large number of my ratings and reviews still do come from my network. So not necessarily lifelong friends, probably people that I've met within the last year and a half, but maybe knew me before they read my novel.
Mm-hmm.
But each time that a completely anonymous rating and review comes in, I really look at those closely to see, did I achieve what I wanted to achieve? Are readers receiving this the way that I want them to? Does the rape scene in my book specifically land the way that I hope it does? I do acknowledge, in fact, listeners to the podcast know this, but that is largely the reason my book didn't get a traditional publishing deal. I had a literary agent for 3 years sending that book out, and we would get responses from editors at different houses that said, really enjoyed the book, kind of feel like the content is a little bit too racy for the time we're in. I don't know how well it'll sell or how I can market it, given this scene. So I think we're going to pass for now. And I think that was hard to go through. And so when I self-published it, I've been very, very aware of how readers take it. So far, I think I've had one or maybe two people be decidedly negative about it, and I think that that's a pretty fine ratio. I want to ask you now, in terms of, it's clear to me through reading your reviews that people are receiving your book well. You have a pretty high rating on Amazon. You also have a lot of reviews for a book that's fairly new. Can you talk to me from the marketing standpoint of how have you gone out to get your reviews? What tricks have worked for you to get people finishing the book and leaving that review? Yeah.
Well, part of it, of course, is building up my street team. When I released The Unexpected Queen, I literally had 3 beta readers, and I didn't even know what an ARC reader was. I
Hmm.
was very new baby author learning all of this
Yeah.
still. Um, so then when I was releasing Courting Fate, and people were like, oh, this sounds really interesting. I'd like to know more about it. So I started talking to other authors. I had so much help. That's the biggest thing with Twitter and the writing community, was so much with, oh, make sure you know your keywords, and not just like your Amazon keywords, but when you're promoting your book. Like
Yeah.
today I posted a ad on Twitter. It has found family, assassins, betrayal, for forbidden romance, because some people may like one or all of those and say, oh, that sounds like an interesting book, I should at least check it out. Excuse me. But honestly, one of the biggest pieces of advice, the best piece of advice I've gotten: don't market yourself on social, don't market your book on social media, market yourself. And what that means is, yes, I do post pictures of my book. I do post, oh, go to Amazon and check out Courting Fate today.
Yeah.
It's a great read on a rainy day, or, things like that. But, I post pictures of my mug that has the cover on it, and hey, I'm writing my book, and having my hot cocoa this morning. And I literally sold a paperback because somebody
Oh,
loved my
interesting.
mug.
Oh, that's
They
great.
immediately responded, oh my gosh, I just bought the paperback. And I did see that, show up in my sales. But the biggest thing is just when people are talking about, I'm not having a good day with my book, and they just want somebody to talk to, and just interacting with them. And a lot of times they'll DM me, and we'll talk more personal about what's going on. And just building up these relationships. And then, like with you, I had seen your book before. I'm not typically a mystery or thriller reader, but I did have you on, my TBR. But then when we decided to do the review swap, I put you on my calendar. I read it in about 4 hours,
Yep.
and I did thoroughly enjoy the book, as you see from your review. And that is honestly just engaging and interacting with readers and other writers is the best way to get yourself out there. I mean, there is one writer that I am friends with, God bless them. They just post the same thing 2 or 3 times a day on Twitter. Basically, here's my book, here's what's in it, here's the link. And that's all they do.
Yeah.
And then they DM me and they're like, I'm not getting sales, I'm not getting reviews. And I give them the same advice I just said, interact on these posts, engage in the writer's lips, make mood boards, make, merch. If you can afford it, make merchandise with your books on it. And that's how I've really gotten word out. And giveaways, I do my giveaway, and I ask the person if you're comfortable doing an unboxing video on TikTok, if you're okay to leave a review. I don't expect these things of you. You absolutely do not owe me anything. This is a free book. But if you're comfortable with that, I would greatly appreciate it. And that's actually how I've gotten some of my best reviews, is doing my giveaways and building up. And because of these giveaways, they join my street team and are excited to read everything. I have a grandfather in New Jersey who won my giveaway for The Unexpected Queen and Courting Fate. He did not have a Goodreads account, and he specifically created one just so he could review both of those books.
Oh, that's great. That's phenomenal. You know that you have a fan when somebody will do that.
Absolutely. And again, I know how blessed I am. Not everybody can send out physical copies. Not everybody can send out PR boxes. Not everybody can do giveaways. And I acknowledge and I understand how lucky and fortunate I am to do that. And I view my books, and this is how I had to explain it to my husband when we were discussing terms of paying my editor and like the publisher's weekly review and things like this, that these books are an investment. It's a marathon, not a sprint. It's going to take time. But if you approach it that way, that these are an investment and put money into it, you will get back out of it, assuming, of course, that you have a good product to get out. If I did these giveaways and everyone was like coming in my DM, look, I won this book, but it wasn't a very good book, and I'm just not comfortable posting a review, then clearly I don't have a good product. But I'm comfortable and confident both in my books enough that I am happy to do these giveaways, knowing that 9 times out of 10, I'm going to get a review out of it.
Yeah. That's a really positive way of thinking of it. I am just venturing into newsletter swaps on BookFunnel. And I'm excited to see what the outcome will be with that, because I think that I will probably, through newsletter swaps, end up having, several hundred books go out for free to readers. I'm curious if I'll start to see reviews trickle in from that, because I have used other methods than the ones that you've talked about for the most part to get reviews. One of the best ways that I have, and I think it's real similar to what you talked about, is when I sell a paperback through my website, I include a handwritten note right now. I'm not selling enough books that's prohibitive, though my handwriting is terrible. Sign the book, leave a handwritten note, and I say, it means the world to me when readers vote on my book as something that they're interested in reading. And so thank you for buying this copy. When you're done reading it, if you love it, and I think you're going to, will you drop a review on Amazon? That has been one of the best ways. I think that handwritten note, like a lot of people are willing to take the extra minute to leave the review when they see a handwritten note. It becomes
I do that as
impossible.
well.
You do, yeah.
And my handwriting is atrocious, so I
Yes,
literally have to sit down for 5 minutes just
I
to
know.
write, basically like you said, just a very
Yes,
simple, like a
exactly.
person, please leave a review kind of thing.
hmm It's funny, yeah. If like four sentences does, it takes me several minutes to write because I have to write larger letters, all caps, so that it's legible, and it's just really funny. I wonder if that's common for writers to all have terrible handwriting. So bad, but
I'm seriously, I have pre-orders up now for my Kingdom of Forgotten Curses book box
mhm.
that will be released in October. It comes with the signed hardcover and bookmarks and keychains and other book swag that I've been making. And I've been talking to an author friend of mine named Samantha that I was like, I think I'm going to just type up a letter and hand sign it.
Mm,
Only because with it being a fairy tale retelling, I can do like a parchment look, very cute letter, so it's still personalized, and
mhm.
like I would handwrite their name. But for me to try to do 50
Yeah,
letters with my handwriting
I know.
is not going to go well. But
Yeah.
really quick, since I mentioned Samantha Moran, she is my Twitter wife and author best friend on Twitter, and she does the newsletter. And if you look at her books, like Dealings in the Dark just came out, I think, last October, and she already has like 40 or 50 reviews nearly for it.
hmm
Because, like you mentioned, with the newsletter, with getting the words out there, she does a lot of in-person events as well. Um, and she's actually coming down here to Indiana, where I am, next month, so we can do a joint book release party for her
Oh,
book that
cool.
comes out tomorrow, The Ruin, and then my book, Courting Destiny, which comes out June 15th. But she said between the live in-person events, where she also gets people to sign up for the newsletter, and then just the newsletter itself, that has definitely helped her with getting reviews.
So there's this huge value in pairing with a couple of readers like Samantha that just walk really close to us. And I've had that with several authors that I know. I'm curious, do you ever find, or let me try to ask the question a different way. We talked about beta readers, we talked about ARC readers. Do you ever feel like there's a point where there are too many hands in the pie? Have you ever had that experience so far, or the more the merrier? Or what's your experience in terms of that early part of the process?
Now, as a baby author still myself, that I haven't even been published a year,
hmm
I ask me that question again in 5, 10 years when
Yeah.
possibly, not trying to like toot my own horn, that possibly I could be best-selling author,
hmm
sold thousands or millions of copies, or who knows. But for right now, talking to other authors, perfect example, Kingdom of Forgotten Curses comes out in October.
hmm
I went on TikTok and posted that I would be, I have the ARC reader sign up on my website. And I thought between now and August, when the ARCs will go out, I thought, if I get 5 to 10 here or there, that maybe I could have 40, maybe 50 ARC readers, by the
hmm
time this book comes out. I had to shut down the submissions within a week because I had 70 people sign up.
Wow, that's awesome.
So I was I am thrilled, and I was very much caught off guard. Um, but from what a lot of the authors on TikTok said, a lot of them do 1 to 200 ARC readers, which I felt was a little high for me, being
hmm
new, unknown, that I thought I'll do 70 for now. And when it gets
hmm
closer, maybe I'll open it up to a few more slots, because even if I get 100 ARC readers, 40 of them might leave a review, which is great. And anyone that leaves a review, I appreciate it. That's great,
Yeah.
but I feel like 10 to 15 beta readers is a good number, and then like the 70 to 100 ARCs. But we'll see how this goes, because I've never had this many beta readers either. I've
Yeah.
average typically about 5 beta readers.
Mhm.
So having 15 betas for Kingdom of Forgotten Curses, if I'm getting such conflict, oh, it needed more spice. Oh my gosh, it didn't have enough spice. Oh my,
Mhm.
too much conflict. Then I might just go back to 5 to 10 readers
Yeah.
for general story issues and continuity, questions, things like that. I also do alpha readers. Some writers do that, some do
Mhm.
not. But I'm really glad I did, because they thankfully, one was an avid reader who reads a lot of romance novels and spice, since this is my first time writing something more focused on that. And the other is an author. So I got feedback from the two people who would typically read my book, a reader and a writer.
Mm.
And I have definitely was very grateful for their feedback, and I'll be starting my rewrite for that tomorrow. So I'll be incorporating some of that in, because they made some really valid points. So I absolutely believe that you should have, at least 2 to 4 alpha readers, 5 to 10 beta readers. And then as far as arcs go, it honestly just depends on how many you can get. I mean, with the Courting Fate, I think I had 8 arc readers sign up, because again, I was relatively unknown. People, didn't really care as much for The Unexpected Queen. My debut novel got mixed reviews, but when I did my Courting Destiny, I ended up with 4 dozen readers. So, because I'm more well known, because I do engage more with people.
Mhm.
So honestly, you're going into the gate, going out the gate, you might get 10 arc readers that sign up, you might get 100, and that's really up to you, how many you want to try for.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about advertising and your books. Are you paying for any advertising? You talked earlier about money, and I knew it was a topic I wanted to come back to. My listeners are pretty used to hearing us talk about money on this show. I think it's a really important thing to grapple with. So things that I talk about spending on would be your cover art, spend money on your editing, spend money on formatting if you need to, whether that's owning a program like Vellum or having somebody who is a professional formatter come through and help you get your book set up. And then there's the cost of advertising, the cost of sending out books like you talked about for an art team if somebody wants a paperback, or if you hope to get on a podcast interview, maybe sending out to the host and saying, hey, would you be open to reading the book and interviewing me? Those kind of things are expected costs. What about advertising? Have you done any? And if so, where have you spent your dollars and what kind of return have you seen?
I literally, it's funny you should ask that, because I literally just started an advertisement with Amazon, which I have
Okay.
no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I've tried to read, I know a lot of people have heard of Lee Hall on Twitter with his talking about
Yeah.
his
He
marketing.
interviewed on this podcast.
Okay. I have tried to kind of follow what he said as far as like the keywords and the bids and things. And so
Hmm.
since I literally just set this up, I don't know yet how it's going to do. Um, Honestly, my biggest, and it's not really expense, but for marketing, is my Canva app,
Oh, okay.
because I use that for my covers and my ads, and I make my own ads, which I then post on
Hmm.
Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, and on Pinterest. I don't even know if anybody's really on Pinterest anymore, but
Yeah.
but now, like, I don't know if you would consider this for advertising, but I did purchase the Book Life review by Publishers Weekly.
Okay.
I know that is a little pricey, but I'm so grateful I did, because not only did my book review get published in Publishers Weekly, it received a phenomenal review. It gives me quotes that I can then, oh, Publishers Weekly says this, and
Yeah.
I got an A- in Publishers Weekly, and like, again, I didn't just post a review on Twitter and say, oh, here's my review, check this out. I posted
Hmm.
a picture of my magazine at Books a Million with a frozen hot chocolate that my husband bought me to celebrate, my review, and that got more, interaction from people. So to me, it was a review, but I was paying more for using it for my marketing, for
Absolutely.
promoting.
Yeah. That is marketing for sure. There's anything that you're doing to promote your book that you're spending money on is great. I think that there are some things that we spend dollars on that don't have as much of a return as we want, and other things that we wish we would have poured a ton more money into than we ended up doing. So I've had such a journey. My wife has college education in art, graphic design, things of that nature. So she
Mhm.
designed my covers. She designed them
Oh,
using Canva. I've talked a little bit about this on the podcast.
mhm.
And we had an issue where the style that we decided to use, you could not see it at any level of size adjustment. That the one black was not quite black. Then there was another black that was
Yeah.
the true black. And so there was this almost what would kind of appear like pixelated look to some of the silhouettes. It was really difficult. I ordered a box of 50, so I'm not the kind of person to test the water. So I just immediately when we had our cover ready, I ordered a box of 50 from Amazon to sell direct because I do as much as I possibly can selling direct. Um,
Mhm.
and when I got those books and looked at them, I think there was this really big heart sinking moment of like, wow, I have 50 defective copies. But thankfully, the words inside were great. And I ended up hyping it and saying, hey, you're going to get, if you buy this book right now, you're going to be one of 50 people who has the true first edition with the error on the cover. And I think I turned lemons into lemonade. It was a fun experience and I enjoyed it. But there are some challenges. I notice more and more that authors are designing their own covers. I'm kind of cautious promoting that necessarily, but talk to me about why you decided to design your own covers and let's kind of hash it out.
Well, as you know, the cover itself is actually described at one scene in the book, which I won't really go into since it is
Hmm.
a bit of a spoiler.
Yeah.
But as I was writing it, I could see this cover in my head. I could
Hmm.
imagine the crescent moon for the sea and that rose and crown. And I just was, you know, I considered commissioning somebody to create the cover, but I thought, let me
Hmm.
just see what I can do. So I actually met an artist on Twitter who lives in Australia, and this was before I knew about the Canva program. And honestly, I'm glad now that I did this anyway. I
Hmm.
commissioned her to do me a galaxy painting. I had seen her work on like ArtStation and a few other, art sites when I had been looking to get inspiration for my cover. And she painted the galaxy background that you see on my cover.
Okay.
And she actually sent me a copy of the painting, and then she did a digital version, which is what I used for the cover itself. She also created the moon, which, since you read the ebook, the physical copies actually have a moon on the spine. And what it is, it starts as a small crescent moon, and as each book comes out, it grows into a full moon, showing the progression of the story.
Mm, cool.
So I also hired her to do that. Um, but I thought, okay, I have these elements, it all in all for her painting and this digital design cost me roughly $100. And then using Canva, I'm like, okay, $100. I'm going to try this myself. I'm going to see how this looks. And if I
Hmm.
don't like it, or if I get negative feedback on Twitter when I post, hey, this is the cover I'm thinking of doing, then I would start looking to commission somebody to create my cover.
Yeah.
Instead, so many people, oh my goodness, I love that. I love that the moon is the sea, or that's such a beautiful cover. And then somebody suggested the border on it. So then we added the border. And I did work with another author who hires somebody to do his covers, but he has a general, like I did, like the general idea of what he really wanted and was really passionate about what he wanted on his cover.
Hmm.
And he kind of walked me through it too. And in the end, I mean, I got a B+ rating from Publishers Weekly for it. It won an award on Author Shout, for cover of the week. So I am pleased with somebody who has minimal graphic design experience, to be
Yeah.
honest, at how happy the covers have turned out.
Yeah. I had this experience with my covers where I had a conversation, a follow-up conversation with an author who's been on this podcast. She's been extremely successful at direct fulfillment, is just a consummate marketer, really giving, generous person. And I had a phone call with her just privately to ask, what kind of things she thought I could do if I wanted to run a Kickstarter. And she pulled up the book on Amazon and said, you have to change your cover. That's the first thing you have to do. Your cover is doing you no favors. And that really, really was a downer for me. And
Mhm.
then she was the second person of some note who had made that comment to me. Both of them also said, "Now I don't read in your genre, but when I look at that cover, it just doesn't seem like it's going to help you out." And so I went and I paid somebody else to design a cover, and then I did a reveal on Twitter. And the hilarious thing was, everybody said, "I liked your old cover better." Really liked your old cover. And I was like, oh gosh,
Wow.
great. So I ran the new covers for a couple of days, had no sales, felt in my heart like something was wrong, went back to the other covers. And the very moment that I switched back to the old covers, I started getting sales again. And I was like, well, okay, so there's something going on here where we have to be in conversation with our intuition, what we think is right, and then be willing to adapt and change when signs point toward possible problems. So the fact that your book is selling well right now, that you have a lot of reviews, that you have very positive reviews, it seems to me like you've made a good choice. I always caution people when I hear that you designed your own cover without any kind of experience in doing it. But it's so hard now that I've had this experience to say that there's one fit for everybody.
Let me just say, my debut novel, I did the cover myself, and the cover received mixed reviews. I had
Mhm.
one woman who bought the book specifically because she loved the cover,
Mhm.
and I had some women say it looked, and I had some people, men and women both. I had some people say it just looked absolutely terrible. So it was mentioned even in reviews, people loving or hating.
Oh.
It was so wishy washy. So I did create a new cover. I got feedback again from some of my author friends on Twitter, DMing with them, sending them the cover. What do you think of this?
Mhm.
And the new cover has gotten much more positive feedback. So, we do have to be open to changing things. I do still love my original cover. My husband took one of my updated paperworks to a coworker of his and said, oh, there's no charge for this. But since she updated her cover, she wants you to have this. And she's like, no, I
Mm.
absolutely love her original cover. I don't want this new one.
Yeah.
She said, so again, it like anything with the book itself, it's going to be subjective. People are going to love your cover. People are going to hate it. But as long as it's overall, with the Unexpected Queen, it really was 50-50. So that's why I
Mhm.
decided to change it. With Courting Fate, it's been like 95% positive. So obviously, other than
Yeah.
maybe a small tweak here or something, one person said, oh, you should really make your name bigger on, maybe a small
Mhm.
tweak. But otherwise, that I have not changed the cover because it has received such positive feedback.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's the way to go, is respond to feedback and adjust according to that feedback. There have been points where I've been too stubborn, and this is where I kind of want to wrap up because it just fits so well. But I do a program, and it's not a surprise. I do a program called Ammo, so how I learned how to do direct fulfilling of my books. And for a long time, I was running my sales page through my Facebook ads. And I loved the way that it looked. I was so attached to the way that it looked, and it really, really resonated with me. And I had certain elements of it tested, and it was working, but something wasn't happening right. So I would maybe get decent conversion, but people weren't then buying the books. And I was finally at my wit's end and did a complete redesign based on some feedback I'd been getting. And I'm selling tons of books right now, and it's been so nice to see that change. And so I will say that when you get feedback, when you see something's not going right, be willing to adjust, because when you do adjust, oftentimes the result is that you have more readers, more sales. And it sounds like you did that with your cover and learning from your audience, your betas, your alpha readers, your ARC readers. You're a testing machine, it sounds like. And that's a really, really great place to be.
It is. And I do want to say, because I have noticed on Book Talk, there is some discourse between readers, ARC readers, and authors that some ARC readers feel like that they are free labor for giving their review in exchange for the art. And
Hmm.
it's always been my understanding the purpose of the art is for a review. Now,
Yeah,
that's not
absolutely.
saying that you absolutely have to, that I'm not, obviously trying to force anybody, that if you are able to leave a review, that is great and I appreciate it. If for whatever reason you didn't care for the book, but you don't want to speak negatively about the author,
Hmm.
or I myself only leave 3-star and above reviews. And again, this is not at all to dictate how anybody else does a review. This is me as a reader, that to me, if it's only 1 or 2 stars, then it wasn't necessarily the book, that it just wasn't for me.
Mm-hmm.
But, that an ARC reader is not doing a review for free. That is not unpaid labor. They get access to a book that other people are having to wait 1 to 2 months to receive.
Yeah, exactly.
And getting that book in exchange for a review. Now, if that's not the case anymore, or if these terms are changing, again, as writers and readers, so many things that come up that change in the world of books, but I am blessed with my ARC team, and even I did have to blacklist one ARC reader, and a friend of mine DM'd me like, "Oh my gosh, I saw your tweet. Did she leave you a 1-star review?" I would never blacklist an ARC reader for a 1-star, 2-star review unless they attacked me personally. "Oh my gosh, this author is a horrible person," or something along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
This ARC reader actually went on Twitter and not only blasted me, they blasted my editor, they blasted my readers.
Oh, geez.
Anybody who reads this book and is leaving her reviews, she's clearly paid money for. She's these readers are liking her books. And again, ARC readers and regular readers and authors, all three of us, can we just keep a polite, civil, professional relationship? And all of these problems would go away. you know?
Right.
I mean, doesn't that make sense?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, my understanding of ARC readers, in fact, anytime I've had ARCs, I say do not accept a copy of this book unless you're willing to leave a rating and review, because that's the point of this, is to read it, rate it, review it honestly, and you get free access to a book early. So that's kind of been my feeling about it. I didn't realize that there even was a conversation about free labor. I was like, no, it's definitely not free. You knew how many hours I spent writing this book, you would understand that every time I give a copy away, it's heartbreaking. It's really tough to give away work that I have labored on so hard. Okay, for everybody who's listened,
it's really
yeah, I wanna have you promote yourself. Where do you like people to find you? It sounds like you're pretty active on TikTok as well. I know that I met you over on Twitter. Where else do you want people to connect with you, and what's the best way for them to get your books?
I am also on Instagram and Pinterest. If you just type in A.R. Coffer, you'll find me on there. I have the 2 books out right now, Courting Fate and The Unexpected Queen, which are available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Waterstones, Thrift Books, basically any major book site. My books are there. Courting Destiny, which is book 2 after Courting Fate, will come out 1 month from today. Pre-orders are already available for it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, all those sites that I just said. I have been very fortunate that my books have been picked up by most of these major book sites.
Absolutely. That's phenomenal. That's really exciting. I'm glad that you have the opportunity to go wide like that. And I will make sure to put links to all of your social media and then your Amazon link and all of that good stuff. It was fantastic that we met. I'm really glad that we had the opportunity to talk, and I'm sure that we will be in touch.
Yes, thank you so much. I appreciate being on your show today, and I appreciate this conversation. Thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thank you, me too. Thank you for listening to TRBM. The theme music was provided by the ever-talented Christopher Talon. And hey, if you liked what you heard, share this show with other readers, because what's the point of telling stories if nobody's listening?